Thank you. And thank you guys for having me. I'm extremely excited to talk about the Content Authenticity Initiative today. We're going to be diving into this great opening that Ron just gave and this very timely New York Times article as the world of AI gets bigger and easier, more democratized for anyone to create faked content. This really gets to the heart of something that we've been thinking about at Adobe and across the digital media industry for a couple of years now. I started working on this in the summer of 2019 during the election campaign as there were more and more concerns about what it might mean for our society overall, that it's hard to trust what we see online. And so in 2019, we were seeing the first generation of deepfakes being weaponized at large scale. And I think, there's been a pretty good history across the web, understanding that still images can be manipulated through software. But there was still this notion that video and also images, our brains see something and we just immediately assume that it's true. Could be weaponized in really harmful ways to prevent us as a society from really having a shared truth. And that's what we talk about a lot on the Content Authenticity Initiative. So in 2019, this spun up. In the age of AI today, I think it's only getting more and more important to make sure that the content that we see online and the content that our users are being exposed to is what it claims to be. So we just have a bunch of headlines here. I don't think it's going to be news to anyone that we have a lot of concerns at a government level, at a company level, around lying and deception going on by sharing content. So a very brief history of content authenticity. We founded it at Adobe MAX. Our key partners were the New York Times and Twitter when we founded this. And I'm going to go into this deeper, but our idea here was, the industry was very focused on what we would call detection-based solutions, or I just found this photo on Facebook. How do I press a magic button that tells me this is real or fake? And we said, actually, there's a different approach there. If you're on the detection side of the world, you end up in this kind of constant cat and mouse game, similar to antivirus technologies, where the good guys are always chasing the bad guys. And when the good guys do something right, it's only a matter of time until the bad guys catch up again, and then the race starts over. And so we said, instead of trying to focus on detecting what is fake, we should really be focusing on a way to prove what is true. And so we did that starting with the C2PA standard. So we founded the standards body in 2020. We have a bunch of great partners there, including folks like the BBC, Intel, and we are working really hard at incorporating feedback from across the ecosystem. So I encourage you guys to check out C2PA and CAI, especially if you have interest in getting involved. And we'll go in a little deeper about what the implementations look like. But we created the standard that allows folks to share assets. And I think of it a lot like metadata that has two additional components. One, it's cryptographically signed. So it's tamper evident. If anyone changes anything within the metadata or within the content credentials, as we call them, that would be a break of the chain, and we would be able to know that this has been invalidated. And the other thing is it's trying to up-level this to consumers. So this is something where we really want, I use my mom as a test all the time. My mom on Facebook, could she engage with this information and be able to make a determination of, yeah, I know that this is coming from a source that I really do believe to be that source and not misrepresenting themselves. And so we got to work on that in 2020. We're now on the third update of that spec. It's out, it's public, and I'll encourage you all to check out the C2PA. We first launched betas in Photoshop and Stock at Max in 2020. Those have been continuing. So we are live in a number of apps right now at Adobe, including Photoshop, Lightroom as a beta, Stock, Behance, And we have some exciting new stuff coming out that I can't quite talk about in the coming months. We've been very focused on scaling this across governments, policymakers. You may have seen us on the Today Show yesterday. As Ron talked about, we were in the New York Times today. We were members of the, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but there was a democracy summit that the White House put together last year that we briefed. We've also briefed government and intelligence agencies around the world, thinking about how we have truthful content. So when something comes from the government to their constituents, how do you know that that actually came from the government? Last year at MAX, we had some really exciting expansions where we got some open source integrations with Leica and Nikon. So these were the first capture app manufacturers. So at the point of taking a picture, they include this information, which is super exciting for us. Microsoft also launched their first integration using video. And there was recently the first, what they called it an ethical deepfake, where someone used deepfake technologies to do something, but used C2PA and CAI to share transparently with their audiences everything that they did. And today we launched with Adobe Firefly. Adobe Firefly is our generative AI model. It's something that we have text to image, we have some additional effects. And so that is something that we have ensured that everything that comes out of an Adobe Firefly module either has or will have in the future a content credential that shows that this is something that has come off of Adobe and come off of an AI generation model. We have over 1,200 members of the CAI. You can see some highlighted members here, folks like the AP, BBC, Canon, Nikon, Microsoft. We're represented across the world, I believe on all continents, at least all populated continents. And this is really intended to be an interoperable standard. So there's a world here where people are not Adobe subscribers, they don't do anything in Photoshop, but they still use content credentials and they still have this as a key part of all of the content that they're building into their applications, that they're sharing through their applications, to add an extra layer of trust and verification for both the creator of that content. They don't want their content to be manipulated downstream, which we see all the time, or ripped off. Maybe folks are selling something on a store, or maybe folks are sharing art. They want extra protections. And then consumers want to make sure that what they're looking at is what they're supposed to be looking at, that there hasn't been someone who's misrepresenting them. And so we have a lot of organizations that think about how we have this at a ecosystem level, and so that regardless of whether you have an Adobe subscription or not, that this is something that gets built into applications and is readable and writable from across the web. What does it look like? This is a quick example of what the consumer view would be of one of our images that was generated by Firefly, which again is our AI model. So if this came off of an Adobe Firefly, maybe I did a text to image prompt of, a lone flower coming up in a scene, and this is what happened. You can see on March 12th, it was generated by an Adobe Firefly. And then this travels with the image. So one of the things that's really core and different about our approach is it's not platform specific. You're not relying on the platform to put context around your assets. It travels with the image. We like to call it a suitcase, or sometimes we call it a nutrition label for content. And this isn't just for images. We also have video, audio, and there will be some 3D support, I believe, coming soon. I touched briefly on this, but how we think about this becoming an implemented standard that is ubiquitous across the web. We really have a core focus on education. And obviously, we're talking with a lot of governments about how to ethically share a lot of this through legislation and regulation, trying to be a constructive partner in those conversations. We use the word provenance a lot, which comes from the art world. It means origin. And this is about having a way to track something back to where it came from. So if you're showing content on your application and there is user-generated content, or users can, upload their own content, anything of that sort, Having provenance allows consumers and the application itself to go back and say, okay, do you really have the rights to share this with us? Do you really have ownership? And what was the original context? What we are not doing is detection, which I touched on a little earlier. We are not trying to say, an example here, I got married recently. All of my wedding photos were edited. We do not want to put up big red X's across the web saying that those are fake photos because they were edited. And we really think that context matters quite a bit. These are additive. So as we think about content credentials, you would get one that builds on top of each other, each step of the process. So when we create an asset, whether that's captured on a smartphone or something, edited in something like Photoshop, published, and then viewed downstream, you would have a content credential from where it was created, you would have a content credential from where it was edited, and you would have a content credential from where it was published, and consumers would be able to follow that full chain of custody down. We talk about this as a new kind of metadata. On the right-hand side here, you can see a expanded view of what we call our social preview. So the idea here is this preview would be on anything as you scroll through your social media or through an application. Anything that has content credentials attached to it would have in one click this easy to read social preview with that view more button if folks want to get more forensic. This is all about bringing context and transparency. So all of this relies on the signer of the content credentials. In Photoshop's case, the signer is Adobe. But we're saying who is asserting these facts about this image, when it was created, how it was created. And then it's really about empowering your end consumers or your end customers to be able to make those determinations for themselves of, if they think Adobe is trustworthy or not. It's a lot about transparency. So we're not trying to necessarily go out and actively police anything. If there's a break in the chain, it doesn't invalidate everything, but we're transparent about where there was a break in the chain, and we share that with end consumers. We think a lot about attribution here. So, anyone who's creating something that is leaving their platform, how do you make sure that it still has that attribution back to the original creator or to the original app or platform? And we really think about this as a trust and safety mechanism, as we get deeper and deeper into a world where we flip from trusting all content and trying to pick out which one is fake to trusting no content and having to proactively prove that something is real. These are really tools that are meant to enable that shift to be something that is swift and benefits both creatives and consumers. We have created a number of open source tools. So the C2PA is an open standard. Adobe has been working with some folks in the CAI to create a suite, actually, of open source tools. We have everything from kind of that full REST SDK, full library, to JavaScript SDK for styling on your website. We also have what's called the C2PA tool here, which is an executable. And so the idea here is there's an open Discord community, there's an open spec. We're putting out tools. We're definitely taking guidance from the community, and this is something that is actively being worked on and built. So as folks have ideas or questions, please feel free to find us on Discord or reach out to us online and join the conversation about what these tools should be able to offer and how. I'll skip over the C2PA just because I already touched on that. But I will just say we had some big news with Canon, Leica, and Nikon, all of which are partners of ours, and all of which are thinking about a future where this is part of the hardware. So as we're building out this ecosystem and taking each step of content being content credentialized, it's really awesome for us to see partners at source where we can really get back to provenance. We have a couple of examples. We did something with Rolling Stone where they did an article and they shared their images where they have C2PA information so that folks can get deeper into all of those images. It was very successful, and this is something that we definitely look at as we think about news media and expanding consumer access to C2PA data in the news that they consume. We've worked very closely with PAI. They are the Partnership on AI. They put out a responsible practices for synthetic media guideline. This is a framework for really anyone to use as they think about dealing with the ethics of bringing AI and synthetic media into their applications. We were one of the launch partners and we helped write this. And I really encourage folks to get involved here. If you're dealing with synthetic content and you don't always know the right thing to do, this is a great organization to help support those decision-making and something that we work with closely. You can also catch us live if you're posting things on your Behance, which is a kind of creative portfolio, a bit like social media for designers. That is where we have kind of our reference implementation today. And the last thing that I just want to touch on as we get into AI, one of the things that we've been spending a lot of time on is not only saying this content was generated using AI, but also allowing for creators to say, do not train in this content credential information. And so in this world, this allows people who don't want their images or their videos to be put into training sets for generative AI to indicate that in their content credentials. And we're working with the major folks and organizations behind a lot of the text to image generators and similar tools for really the preservation of user intent if they do not want their works to be thrown into a training set. And with that, I will wrap up. Thank you for the time. I'm really excited about where this is going. I think that there's a ton of opportunity to get involved if anyone's super interested, and feel free to find us on the web.